Episode 3 is going to cover 1996, kind of an important year for me personally. You know, at the beginning of the year, I was still absorbing and listening to a lot of great music that came out in 1995. One of those is this. Neil Young and Pearl Jam, Mirror Ball. Really cool record. I finally found an affordable copy almost a year ago in Boise, Idaho. My wife and I were visiting some friends of ours and went into a local shop, and this was on the wall. They took an offer. Really fun record. I think this is this whole thing when Neil Young got this grandfather of grunge moniker. I also remember distinctly listening to the Steely Dan live release that was kind of compiled from the 93 and 94 U.S. Amphitheater tour. They reunited Donald and Walter, and they assembled a brand new band. Fantastic shows, and they put the CD out, I think it was the fall of 95, but I remember listening to that at the beginning of the year in Chicago, also in my car, and that was called Alive in America. We are still waiting for a vinyl release on that. Fast forward to the fall of 1996, I was actually living in San Francisco. I was commuting down to Santa Clara. I had an apartment, basically kind of Pacific Heights area, and I would put this CD on in the car. This is the second Wilco record. It's fantastic. It's a double album. This is the Bernie Grundman reissue. I think this is from 2009. It came with a CD that you can see I've never bothered to. I don't need it. This is just a gorgeous record. I just can't imagine this thing sounding any better. But you know, now that Rhino Hi-Fi has done the debut Wilco record, we will see. We will see what comes of that. Maybe this will become a Rhino Hi-Fi, but again, I am not kind of like waiting on bated breath. This thing sounds amazing. The 2009 reissue, Lacquers by Bernie Grundman. Another huge record for me. And I picked up the 25th anniversary limited edition. Was this last year? That's the Smoke Marble limited pressing. New Adventures in Hi-Fi, R.E.M, the last record with Bill Berry. An amazing double record. Sounds really, really nice. I've never heard the original. Of course, I had this on CD when it came out. Kind of an expansive, you know, this is, I guess the facts are out there, but this was kind of conjured up and recorded at sound checks on the road. They did some touch-up work and re-recording in the studio after that, but it is an amazing record. I recently posted this on Instagram, and I think I had a comment from, who was it? I think it was Jeffrey from Tubelandia, mentioning that this is really a sleeper in the Neil Young catalog, and I totally agree. This is a really cool record. I had this, I remember I bought this the week it came out in San Francisco. I think I went to either the Virgin Megastore or Tower Records at that point in time. Tower Records was just on the side of North Beach. And I finally found a vinyl copy of this, and this is not easy to find. A couple years ago now, double LP. This has CB and the Dead Wax, which of course is Chris Bellman. So he cut this thing originally when it came out, and he's done almost all of the Neil Young remastered reissues that have come out as well. They all sound great. But this is a great record. Really gets into a groove on a few songs with Crazy Horse. Broken Arrow. And here we are, Counting Crows, Recovering the Satellites. Just a very, very cool record. Not quite as poppy as their debut. I got this original pressing 2 or 3 years ago as well on DGC, David Geffen Company, Geffen Records. I actually saw this tour. I think it was the summer of 96. It must have been maybe the fall of 96. Up in Portland, Oregon. Flew up there from San Francisco. I had some friends that are living there, and I remember we kind of made a weekend of it. And I think this was at the Arnold, what's the name of that? Very nice theater up there. The Schnitzer Amphitheater, something like that. I don't know. Great record. One of the highlights of my collection.
This is my friend Jeff from Chicago. He's gonna sing this number.
You always thought in a town this size that you'd always have a place to hide. You can't treat your woman right. You've got another one on the side. She don't have to see you. She don't have to see you to see through you. Tell you all about it. You used to brag. Used to brag to all your friends, telling them all about your other love. But you never thought she'd be given away. The very thing that you've been getting plenty of. She don't have to see you. She don't have to see you. See through you.
A few reasons I like that clip. First of all, Jeff Tweedy, very young Jeff Tweedy, kind of pulling a rock star move, jumping, almost into the crowd. If you know Tweedy very well, you know currently that's kind of out of character. The second thing I like about it is he was in this kind of quasi super group, Golden Smog. Golden Smog consisted of Gary Loris from the Jayhawks, Jeff Tweedy, of course, Craig Johnson of Run Westy Run, and the other kind of lead character, Dan Murphy, lead guitar player, formerly of Soul Asylum. how does this tie into 1996 for me? So at the beginning of the year, I was still living in Chicago, and I remember going to dearly departed club on North Lincoln Avenue across from the Biograph Theater where John Dillinger was shot. A lot of people will kind of make that connection. The club was called Lounge Acts. It was actually co-owned by a lady named Sue Miller, who eventually married Jeff Tweedy. They got married in the club in 1995. They had neighbor complaints, noise complaints. It was ridiculous. They had to close down, I think, in the early 2000s. I love that place so much. I have a lithograph print on my wall back here of the facade. It's a very distinctive place. It was very tight. I think capacity was about 500 people. I saw a ton of shows there when I lived in Chicago. So I eventually moved in 1996 in May to San Francisco. I got a real job. It was the first time, not having to work in the hospitality, the restaurant business. Was super excited. It's a job that would eventually take me over to Europe, and I ended up working in Europe in that same business for, about 7 years, and I morphed into something else, eventually landing in southern Spain, but I worked all over Europe. Anyway, back to 1996. I was living on Russian Hill, basically, Polk Street, Polk and Filbert, if you know the area. In the 90s, it was fun. The apartment that I had was third floor on the back of the building, so looking across, if it wasn't foggy, and that was very rare, I could actually see the Golden Gate Bridge. This was like a studio apartment. It had a Murphy bed in it. It was absolutely ridiculous, and that's where I landed. A buddy of mine was renting it out. He got shipped out on assignment to Seattle for multiple months, so I had the place to myself. Now, the only downside to living in San Francisco at the time was my office was in Santa Clara, and I took a Google Street View clip here. I'm going to show that, but for a 20-mile drive, maybe 15 miles tops, I think, from Polk Street down to Santa Clara. I don't know, I'll have to do the math, but it was an hour drive every day. And I think I mentioned earlier in the kind of preamble, I was listening to Wilco's second record, Being There. I would play an entire side of that CD and I still wouldn't be at the office. So it was incredible. So I would usually stop at the Starbucks that you'll see in that map photo. That Starbucks is still there. There's the magazine shop that I used to go by, the Wall Street Journal, Rolling Stone, is still there. I think it's called Smoke Signals. I've got a photo of that. I showed a bunch of albums that I was listening to at the time. I want to make a little bit of a correction. I looked this up on Discogs, and the 25th anniversary was back in 2021. So we're 4 years down the road from 2021. Absolutely crazy how time flies. This is a hell of a record. Again, the limited version that was only available on the R.E.M. website. They always do these limited editions of a different variant, and they're usually limited to like 1,500 copies. I was lucky to get on this thing very, very quickly, very early. And it's a glorious record. Look back to Monster. Monster was all about they really glammed it up for Monster. And this is a sprawling rock and roll record. A lot of classic rock leanings in this record. Of course, they had that duet with Patti Smith, but it is a really good listen. I was at Driver 8 Records last Saturday. I popped in to look around, and Charles had this streaming, this record. And I sat down in his shop for a half an hour and we just listened to this album. It had been a while. This is really, really good. Now, another record in 1996 I was listening to was She's the One, the soundtrack to the film Tom Petty. This came out after Wallflowers, produced by Rick Rubin. This is the kind of expanded Angel Dream that came out a few years ago. I would still like to have the original. I'm gonna put a I'm gonna put a hunt out on that one. This sounds really nice. Really cool package. And in preparation for this video, I streamed She's the One, and I was just lots of Beach Boy influences on that record. I think Carl Wilson was on at least two songs. Lindsey Buckingham, probably the number one Beach Boys fan boy out there, is all over this record, and it sounded really, really cool. I haven't heard this in years. When I eventually made it to Europe, it would be a couple years down the road from 1996, and I got turned on to Beth Orton. This is, of course, Trailer Park, and looking this up, it came out in 1996. Now, I wasn't listening to this in 96, but somebody turned me on to this in 1998, and this is a fantastic record. This is a double LP, double 33. This came out a few years ago, a reissued. It sounds great. I was trying to figure out when I actually did see Counting Crows in Portland, Oregon. I can't find the date. They played the Rose Arena, which is it's got a new corporate name now. That is not where I saw Counting Crows. So I don't know what's up with my memory. What are we talking here? We're talking 29 years ago. So I don't know. I have to do some more research to figure out where and when did I see Counting Crows. I think maybe it was a co-headliner with the Wallflowers. I'm going to look back to maybe it was 1997 when I saw them up in Portland. Anyway, I'll report back when I figure it out. Other than that, I didn't see, after I'd made the move to San Francisco, I was really pretty busy trying to get acclimated to this real job that I had and not doing a ton on the weekends. I know I went to Shoreline Amphitheater for one show that summer. I believe it was Lenny Kravitz, and I think it was in late July. That's the only other live gig. Up until January of 1997, I did see Tom Petty at the Fillmore. They did the extended residency. It was fantastic. Never forget it. That's that. 1996. Kind of a cool year for me because I finally made the move from Chicago to San Francisco. It was my second stint in Chicago after moving back to Chicago after the 1 year stint in the LA area. That's on a previous In Focus video. I'm going to make a playlist for these, so if you're interested in hearing me prattle on about personal history and a little bit about music, check those two out. Thanks, everybody, and I want to say thank you, everybody. Also, I just concluded this past weekend my second Instagram record sale. I think I sold about 18 interesting records and cool pressings, and some very sought after. I want to thank everybody for checking that out, and those that made a purchase, they're on the way. I'm going to make this kind of a semi-annual undertaking. I did one in January, one this past weekend. We'll see what happens between now and January again. I'll probably pick up some dupes and extra copies and cool things that, rather than have them just kind of accumulate dust here and maybe be on a shelf where I have dupes, it's cool to get them in other people's hands, and I hope you enjoy them. thank you everybody for that, and we'll be back with something new and different pretty soon. Take care.